Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I am the Curious Psych NP, and you'll see that today I am joined by the Psych NP and Life of a Psych NP. If you guys haven't already, please give them a follow. They are wonderful, wonderful people. Together, we are the Psych NP Group, and we have actually made a new channel, which you can see in the link description box below, where we will be actually talking about a lot of hot topics in the psych nurse practitioner world, giving a lot of our advice and feedback, and to help bring our profession together. So for today, I have a very special question for you guys, which I'm hoping you guys can help me out with. I want to know, what kind of interview questions have you gotten as a Psych NP?
I've been on many interviews. I used to go on interviews just to go on interviews to kind of sharpen my skills, just to be able to see like, oh, maybe if I can get the job, if I can't get the job, what are they offering in pay, or what are they offering in general? And I loved going to interviews, but I want to say the hardest question kind of given to me, or you get your common questions like, tell me about your experience as an RN. Did you work in psych? What made you become a psych NP? Things like that, right? Your normal everyday questions. But I think the hardest one was actually running through an actual initial evaluation. So this is for a telepsych physician that deals with like SMI patients, severely mentally ill patients that are doing drugs, on multiple antipsychotics, long-acting injectables. So he kind of ran me through like what I would do in the whole initial evaluation, what I would ask, what interventions I would do, what labs I would look for, everything, the whole entire initial evaluation. And I think that was like crazy, because you would think just you wouldn't need a note. Like, you obviously know how to do that, but if you were a new grad and you didn't know what to do, and the crazy thing was it was a phone interview. And I remember specifically, I was at the gym when he called. So I had to step to the side. I had my headphones in, asking all of these questions, doing the initial evaluation while I was at the gym. So that was like, I didn't have anything in front of me. And then he asked me about medications. What medication would I use for this? If they're doing drugs, what long-acting injectable would I use? What lab would you run? All of these questions. And I think that was like the craziest interview, because it was on the spot and I was at the gym. I wasn't even prepared for it at all. And it's crazy. Yeah, I think that was like the hardest. So you always have to expect the unexpected at the end of the day. So you kind of have to go through your, like, tell me about yourself, tell me about your experience, but then think that you might be asked to actually do a whole entire evaluation from the very beginning, come up with your diagnosis, differential diagnosis, what labs to use, what medications you would use, how long you would do it, what's the starting dose, what are the side effects, potential side effects, and how would you educate me if I were coming in. And that was like kind of the craziest one I've ever been on. I got the job, but still, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, it's like I've done the interviewee side, the interviewer side, more recently. And I think the number one question, guys, that I would probably, I've been asked as a interviewer and interviewee was that, what made you passionate about becoming a Psych NP? What's the reason, right? So like for me, this is the number one question I'll ask anybody. And if they tell me and I see something like they're not passionate about it, well, I'm not going to even hire them. I don't even need to go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 of the questions. If you don't have any of the passion for it, if I don't see that there's a reason, like what sparks you, what is your why, right? Because if you don't have a why, you're not going to probably be a very good Psych NP, for one. You're going to burn out very quickly. If you have a why, it's going to really take you anywhere. This is not just for a Psych NP role. If you're passionate about it, you need to tell them, what sparked in your life. It's like, okay, I really wanted to become a Psych NP. And this happened. I had this experience. My family. There's something like that. I think that's probably the most important question. I think number 2 is clinical questions. So I've definitely been asked a lot of clinical questions in terms of like about the antidepressants. So like they'll give you a patient scenario. They'll talk about they've been depressed. They've been on a couple medications, so you kind of have to rule them out. You can use those. And it's like, what medication would you prescribe this patient, depending on their history? And you guys really have to know your stuff. It's probably basic level questions they're going to ask you. Well, it could be a bipolar question. It could be an alcohol use disorder question. But I think, guys, just even before this interview, you should really focus on that. I also think mission statement, knowing the values of whatever company you're going to be applying to. Because, a lot of people write cover letters, and then in their cover letters, they'll just say to this company. You might as well just put whatever company and just, edit it out, copy and paste it, and put their actual company. It takes like 10 seconds of your time. So then they really feel like, okay, this person that's interviewing for my company, they really want to join my company, not just this generic cover letter they're sending to everybody. But you want to see whatever they have in their mission statement, really talk about it. It's like, wow, I really agree that you want to see these patients for longer than 15-minute med checks. Whatever company hires you, they want to see that their values or their mission statement is going to be shown in you. And if they don't have that, they don't see that in you, they're not going to hire you. So I would say those three things, guys, are probably the three most important things that I know, and from my side as an interviewee and an interviewer.
Man, I think the huge question that I got that I actually thought about was, what are your passions? Like, what do you like to do outside of work? And if you don't necessarily know that, just because we deal with a population where it's stressful, like every single day you go into work, you're going to be dealing with something new and you're not going to know what to expect. So you want to be able to kind of have something, like when they asked me that, it took me a little bit longer to respond normally than I normally do, just because I didn't have a set question. But if you can kind of have an answer to this, it can kind of set you up to things outside of work. Because I've interviewed people in the past, but for different roles, but just being asked that, it just shed light on what I can do outside of work and how am I going to de-stress, what am I practicing self-care, things like that. And definitely have that in your arsenal, at least an answer for that, just because if they ask you that, because a lot of people are starting to focus in on their own mental health, and you have to kind of have an idea like what's going to help you whenever you're having these moments at work, and what do you have as an outside source to help you relieve all of your symptoms or relieve all of your stress.
Yeah, what did you say, Lev? Like, if you remember, guys, if you guys didn't know, I was actually I was interviewed by the Lev of a Psych NP a long time ago, and he asked me about what I do outside of just how did I balance my work-life balance, and I kind of told him what I did or how to practice self-care. But the Lev of Psych NP, what did you say when you answered the question?
Well, I always talk about first. I started a light on it. Like I always say, oh, I have 2 kids, or I have a kid, they're newborn, blah blah blah, and then they usually say, yeah, I know how that goes. So you kind of just break the ice there. And then pretty much it comes down to what I do for fun. So at that point in time, I used to like to golf. So that's kind of what I did. Like I talked about how golfing was my passion at that point, how I was able to kind of depend on myself. And obviously I'm with friends, but it's a sport where you're outdoors, you get some exercise by walking, hang out with friends, and just isolate yourself to a point where you're focusing on your specific game and being able to kind of have resources outside of that and be able to kind of just do your own thing. And that was important to me at that time. Obviously, things change. I have kids now, so I'm not able to go out on the golf range or course all the time. But that's kind of what I just mentioned, and just being able to say something other than, oh, I like to read books, I like to read articles, which is great and all, but at the same time, you're still going to be focusing too much on work as opposed to what you do for yourself to kind of reduce the stress, and what do you do for self-care and like all those other aspects of your life besides just work. Because I feel like with doctors and like physicians, that's their whole mentality is just all about work. All they do is kind of just work and think about work, going through articles, doing all these things. And then when they start to get older, that's when they start to appreciate everything else. And if you kind of appreciate things now in the moment, as opposed to kind of when you're already sick or too overly worked or stressed out or going through your midlife crisis, that's when things go down the drain. But that's kind of my biggest thing that was helpful. Definitely. And at the time, obviously, until my kids grow older, then I can start doing things again.
There's a lot of high burnout and stress, Lev of Psych NP. It sounds like, people are just focused so much on work. If you don't have any of that balance, like you spoke about, it's going to be a slippery slope.
Yeah, very, especially in mental health. Like, that's why you see so many, psychiatrists. I'm just going to say psychiatrists because that's they have to go through so much work in the very beginning and front loading all of these things, that there's a high mortality rate with psychiatrists, how they commit suicide, so many things going on. But if you don't necessarily focus on that and I know we're going off topic, but I know if you don't focus on that, that's kind of where things will lead to, or they go through that midlife crisis and just go off the walls. I know so many different other medical professionals, especially working inpatient psych, that you see them in the inpatient psych unit because of all this high stress. So it's important that you kind of have an understanding of what you can do for yourself to help reduce the overall stress level, especially working in this field.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad we made that segue because that point is so important. Self-care really, really is so important. It's what we preach to all of our patients, but if we don't practice it ourselves, then, you know, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. And ultimately, what I'm getting from your answers is you have to be able to really understand yourself and your own capabilities to answer all of these interview questions. It's what it sounds like. So if you are hit with a clinical question, if you're asked, what is your passion for psych? Why do you want to become a psych nurse practitioner? You need to really understand yourself to be able to answer all those questions. Now, I have to say, I've never really received those kinds of really difficult clinical questions. Most of the time, it's a conversation between me and the interviewer. And because they more so want to know my personality, my treatment philosophy, rather than what I'm going to do in this particular situation. Because I think in clinical scenarios, you could prescribe like all sorts of different medications. And as long as you have a good rationale for it, you'd be in the right. Nobody can say you're doing wrong. So I think that's kind of how I go about it. As long as you're confident with yourself, you know who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, and you come to an interview with that and say, hey, this is who I am, then, you know, the interviewer is going to have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Because in psych, you really do need to have that introspection to know what your boundaries are, to know what your capabilities are. So I want to thank you guys so much both for giving your insight into this question. Please give them a follow. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And check out our brand new channel where we have lots of cool content coming out, including videos like these. And with that, I'll see you later. Bye.